A 13-year-old boy was about to change the world. But first, his father had to die. King Philip of Macedon was dead, assassinated, and everyone thought young Alexander was finished. His enemies circled like wolves. Other generals prepared to tear his kingdom apart. Neighboring kings sharpened their swords. His own generals doubted he could hold power for even 1 week. But this teenager did something no one expected. He didn't run, he didn't hide, he didn't compromise. In just 13 years, he would conquer the entire known world. He would be undefeated in every battle. He would command armies of 100,000 soldiers, and he would build an empire so massive that it would stretch across 3 continents. His name was Alexander the Great, and his story is about to blow your mind.
Alexander was born in 356 BC in Pella, the capital of Macedonia. But Macedonia wasn't some mighty superpower. It was considered backwards by the Greeks, a rough, mountainous kingdom on the edge of civilization. His father, King Philip II, was a military genius, absolutely ruthless. He spent his life building Macedonia's army into an unstoppable force. Philip had conquered Greece piece by piece, defeating every Greek city-state that stood in his way. But here's the twist. Philip had 40 wives. Yes, you heard that right. In ancient Macedonia, it was normal for kings to marry multiple women to create alliances with other kingdoms. Alexander's mother was Olympias, and she was obsessed with the idea that her son was destined for greatness. She told him stories that he wasn't just the son of Philip, he was the son of Zeus himself. Historians still debate if Alexander actually believed this, but one thing is certain. He grew up believing he was born for something extraordinary.
When Alexander was 13, his father hired the greatest mind in the ancient world to teach him, Aristotle, the legendary philosopher. Aristotle wasn't some boring teacher. He was a warrior philosopher. He taught Alexander not just history and science, but how to be a king, how to think strategically, how to understand human nature, how to inspire loyalty. Aristotle taught him that a great leader must share the hardships of his soldiers, must understand why he fights, not just how, must value knowledge as much as courage. But Alexander wasn't the only student at this royal school. His father made sure his 3 closest friends grew up with him too. These boys, Hephaestion, Perdiccas, and Ptolemy, would become his most loyal generals. And here's something crucial that most people don't know. Alexander's father deliberately placed him on the battlefield at age 16, not to protect him, not to give him easy experience, but to test him, to see if he had what it took. And in the Battle of Chaeronea, the teenage Alexander led the cavalry personally into the enemy lines. His father watched from across the battlefield. When the dust settled, young Alexander had crushed the enemy's best troops. Philip looked at his son from across the field and realized something terrifying. His son might become more powerful than he was. But then everything changed. Philip had conquered most of Greece. He ruled with an iron fist. He was paranoid about rivals. And in 336 BC, after a year of tension with his wife Olympias and whispers of intrigue in the palace, Philip was stabbed to death. Theories exploded. Was it a conspiracy? Did Olympias, Alexander's mother, have something to do with it? Some historians believe she did. Others say it was political enemies. The truth died with the assassin. What we know for certain is this: Alexander was immediately suspected. He was 20 years old. His father was dead. The army questioned his loyalty. Neighboring kingdoms smelled blood in the water. In the next 3 days, Alexander did something brilliant. He arrested his father's suspected assassins. He executed everyone who challenged his right to the throne. He consolidated power so quickly that no one had time to rebel. Then he made a shocking move. He marched his army north to Thessaly, and there he did something that made grown men cry. He performed his father's funeral games, the biggest athletic competition in the known world. By doing this, Alexander showed respect for his father while celebrating his own rise to power.
It was politically genius. The generals watched this 20-year-old kid, and they realized he wasn't just inheriting a kingdom, he was taking it forward.
Here's where Alexander's madness, or genius, became clear. He didn't just want to keep his father's empire. He wanted to expand it, all the way to India, to the edge of the known world. His generals thought he was insane. The Persian Empire was the most powerful force on earth, ruled by King Darius III, with an army of over 1 million soldiers. How could a 20-year-old with 35,000 soldiers possibly win? But Alexander had something better than numbers. He had strategy, he had loyalty, and he had an unbeatable cavalry. In 334 BC, Alexander crossed the Hellespont into Asia Minor. His first battle was at the Granicus River. The Persians thought they had him trapped. They had more soldiers, they had the better position. But Alexander did something no one expected. He led a cavalry charge directly at the Persian generals. Imagine this: thousands of elite Persian infantry, chariots, war elephants, and here comes a 24-year-old man on a horse, leading his cavalry straight at the enemy commander. His generals followed. They fought with supernatural courage because they saw their king leading the charge, not hiding behind the lines. The Persians broke. They ran. Alexander's reputation spread like wildfire across Asia. The young conqueror was unstoppable.
After conquering Egypt, Alexander did something extraordinary. He traveled alone into the Siwa Desert to visit the oracle of Zeus Ammon. When he came out, he told his generals the oracle had confirmed something. He was the son of a god. Here's the genius part. Alexander never said he believed this, but he encouraged people to think it, because a god king commands loyalty on a different level than a regular king. His soldiers would charge into certain death if Alexander asked them to, not because they were forced, but because they believed they were fighting for someone divine. At the Battle of Issus, Alexander faced King Darius III directly. The Persian king commanded over 100,000 soldiers. Alexander had 40,000. But when Alexander charged straight at Darius on his horse, when his generals followed him into the teeth of the enemy, the Persian king fled. He left his own army, his wife, his children, everything. Alexander had won the greatest victory of ancient warfare.
By age 30, Alexander controlled an empire that stretched from Greece to Egypt to Persia to the edges of India. He had won every single battle he ever fought. He commanded 100,000 soldiers who would die for him without hesitation. But here's the tragic part. Even at the top of the world, Alexander was never satisfied. He wanted to keep conquering. His generals were exhausted. His soldiers wanted to go home. But Alexander had tasted power and conquest, and he wanted more. When his army finally reached India, after years of conquering, his soldiers refused to go further. They were tired, they were homesick, they were done. For the first time, Alexander couldn't command his will. His own army mutinied. So the young man who conquered the world couldn't conquer his own army's exhaustion.
Alexander turned back toward home, but in Babylon, in 323 BC, he developed a fever. Some say it was malaria, some say it was poison, others say it was simply exhaustion, that his body finally gave out. On his deathbed, the man who had conquered the known world refused to name an heir. When his generals asked him who should take his throne, Alexander supposedly said only, "To the strongest." And with those words, his empire shattered. His generals fought each other. His empire was divided. Within decades, everything he built was gone. But here's what they couldn't destroy: his legacy. Alexander didn't just conquer land, he spread Greek culture across the entire known world. He founded over 70 cities. He changed the course of human history. He died at just 32 years old. He had been conquering for only 13 years. Yet in those 13 years, he changed the world more than most people do in 100 lifetimes. He came from nowhere, he conquered everything, and he left a legacy that would echo for 2,000 years. This is why Alexander the Great is still remembered as the greatest military commander who ever lived.